biggest cheerleader, being a dreamer, being also a realist. And that's needed in today's world very much. We'll talk about that. And then the fourth week will be prodigals. We're praying for prodigals to come home. Preparedness, releasing, and the proverbial promise. And then the last week, the fifth week, is going to be something that I'm living in real time right now, shifting roles from parent to friend. That mysterious, I've got a 27-year-old and a 30-year-old. I love them more than ever, Just this week, I won't give details of it, but an example of, wow, I know how I would have handled that question when he was 12. But now it's different. Now it's not quite the same. And I can give advice and just come alongside and say, I'm there for you, and I know you're going to make the right decision. I'm praying with you, that sort of a thing. So anyway, the 5 weeks are going to be great. So let's get going. Tonight, session 2, this is titled, Bound to be a Better Way. Bound to be a better way. We're talking about boundaries and expectations. When the boys were little, one time they were playing basketball with the neighbor kids out in the front driveway, and we had this one particular neighbor who was, he's really, really a different guy, had a lot of issues. And they're just, the kids are out there just shooting hoops, and the ball dribbled out of the driveway and rolled across the imaginary boundary into his yard, and he was out there. And so we taught our boys to always be courteous and nice, and they were, and they went over, to expecting to retrieve their basketball, and this guy was in some sort of a mood, and he grabs the ball and just kicks it as hard as he can, kind of yells at him, and the ball goes rolling way, way down the street. And they came in and told me, Dad, here's what just happened. And I tell you what, I went over next door, and I'll never forget the kid standing behind me as I walked past him. I said to him, don't ever treat my children that way again. Now, I'm a pastor. I'm not going to cold cock a guy, right? I mean, although I did, when I was coaching basketball, I did get one technical one time. But I was gentle, but firm. And I will never forget what that did for my boys. My dad's got my back. He's not going to let somebody just... So there was this incident where the ball went over the boundaries, but there were other boundaries that were invisible too. And that was the boundaries that I'm the father of my children. I'm going to watch out for them. I'm going to care for them. And then sadly, a few years later, we learned that individual had far, far more problems than I realized at that moment. And he ended up taking his life. And there were many, many times where I tried to be a friend with him. That was one instance when he crossed a line. He crossed the boundary. But, there's a story of a dog that wanted to get outside of his fence. And how many of you ever know that about dogs? They if they're in a fence, they want to be outside. I got on a first name basis with the animal shelter in Montrose, Colorado, because we had a golden lab, Henry, and they'd call me up, Pastor Keith, we've got Henry down here again. Oh no. There's lots of Henry stories, lots and lots of stories. But this is not a Henry story, but it's similar about an owner whose dog really wanted to get outside the fence and, would just run along the fence, continually, like barking at any other dogs around the boundaries or whatever. And eventually learned he could dig his way out under the fence. And You can imagine digging under the chain link, and then he can scoot his body and bend a hole in the chain link, and he gets into the other yard. Well, what he doesn't realize, he thinks he's, I'm free, I got out. Well, all he did was go to a neighbor's yard. So now he's in another boundary. And then the owner tells the story of how he would he'd try to get back in his yard, so that way he wouldn't get in trouble. And getting back in underneath all those pokey, the fence is now bent the wrong direction, and it catch on him and scar him up, and it hurt to get back in. Just some hilarious stories. But out of that whole episode, this dog owner came up with 7 different comments. 1, there are boundaries everywhere, even if we can't see them. 2, the boundaries were put there to keep us safe and happy. 3, things outside our boundaries will call to us. I guess there are 8 of them. I counted wrong. 4, getting outside our boundaries sometimes will take quite a bit of work. 5, being outside our boundaries is often not as much fun as we thought it would be. 6, sometimes when we think we're free, we're just fenced in as we ever were before, but it's just a different set of boundaries. 7, coming back home sometimes seems more painful than leaving. And 8, no matter how many times we escape, someone will always be looking for us. He may not chase us, but his door will always be open for us if we are willing to come home. And there's a lot of parallels between that dog owner and the way the Lord looks at us. Truly is. He gives us boundaries for our safety and protection. And even if we go out of those boundaries, he still loves us. He still wants us to come home. And he sometimes must laugh at us when we think, oh, I'm free now. All you did was get in another yard, and you still have boundaries. You never get away from boundaries.
I'm going to join the army.
So I want to share with you 6 things about boundaries that are important to know. And let me just tell you, the basis for this teaching is primarily by a lady named Dolores Smith. You can find this teaching on crosswalk.com. It's not original with me, but I am adding my own 2 cents worth into the points and using scriptures and personal stories as well. But 6 different things about boundaries and how important they are. Number 1, responsibility. This one I'll just be really quick. Boundaries teach our children responsibility. Galatians chapter 6, verse 5. It says, for each one should carry their own load. Each one should carry their own load. For our children, it's important that they learn, hey, I've got to carry my own load. And sooner rather than later, it's we each have a responsibility. I know for me, as a dad, I don't know about all of the parents in the room, but as a dad, when I would see my kids struggling, man, I wanted to help. I wanted to jump in there and just help so bad, because I knew I could fix this. I could fix this problem for them. But if we can let them realize I've got to stand on my own 2 feet, that's a very, very valuable lesson to learn. So responsibility. Number 2, consequences. Now both of these come out of Galatians chapter 6, but I read Galatians 6:5, for each one should carry their own load. Listen to Galatians 6, verse 7. Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows, right? We're going to reap what we sow. We're going to grow whatever we plant. I did an illustration in a sermon one time, and people still to this day comment about it, laugh about the fact that I took out an apple and I cut it in half, and I described a few years ago, I had planted an apple seed in my yard, and it grew into a tree. And boy, I was ready for the apples that third year of the harvest, to really be able to enjoy some good apples. But when I went to the apple tree, it had grown oranges. So I pulled an orange out of the bag. I said, so, I thought I was getting apples, but hey, it grew oranges. Those are still good. I cut the orange open. So I took some of my orange seeds and I planted them in the ground, and I waited the 3 years for the harvest expecting to get an orange tree, and this time it grew lemons. And then everybody out here starts going, yeah, right. But you get the point, right? You don't plant apples and grow oranges. You don't plant oranges and grow lemons, but whatever you plant, that's what you're going to grow. And that's the way God made it. So we can't be deceived. Man reaps what he sows. One night at dinner, Stephanie had made a nice dinner. I don't remember what the dinner was that night, but I remember this. Me, the 2 boys, and her, the 4 of us are at the dinner table. And she didn't say a word. She just put a pile of 10 M&Ms in front of each plate, like out on the table, like here's your plate, and on the other side of a pile of M&Ms, and Zach and Dick, their eyes lit up, and they reach out there, and Mom says, no, not yet, that's for later, that'll be after your meal. Oh, okay. Well, she didn't give any instructions, whatever, but she had been trying to reinforce things to the boys, right? And so during the meal, and you can totally use this if it works for you, but during the meal, if they put their elbow on the table, she wouldn't say a word. She'd just reach over, take an M&M off the pile. What's that? Sorry, no elbows on the table. They're like, oh, now we see where this is going. And so then, if one of them interrupted the other one and talked over them, hey, we don't behave that way. We're respectful to one another at the table, or all these different. If they sometimes boys especially will make sounds or do things that what boys can do. Sorry. And I'm glad to say I did finish with 2 M&Ms still in my pile. But it really taught a very good lesson. And it was just such a great teacher that, hey, there's consequences. There's consequences for our actions. And one year, I think Zach was 3rd grade, Stephanie had made, it was a really delicious idea. It was barbecue chicken pizza. And so it was, so tasty. For the sauce, it was barbecue sauce, it had barbecue chicken pieces in it, but it was a pizza. But Zach decided he didn't like it. He wasn't going to try it. Nah, that's not what you do to pizza. He's a purist. 3rd grade, and so, but his mom said, well, you don't have to eat it, but that's what's for dinner. You won't be eating anything else later, but I'll tell you this, you're not, I don't remember how many, but you're not leaving the table until you try X amount of bites of pizza. That was our rule. You don't have to like it, but in our system it was, I don't prefer it. She didn't want you to say, I don't like it, I don't prefer this or whatever. But if you're gonna sit there until you eat this many bites. Well, Zach's got a little bit of a stubborn streak in him. I don't know if any of you ever remember that about him.
No.
So we eat the meal, and I'm not kidding, it was delicious. She had thought they're going to love this. Well, he was not willing to try it. He's not going to do it. So she said, well, you can just sit there until you eat your pizza. So after we sat there quite a while. We talked and everything. I'm like, well, I've got to head back to the study. I've got to get I was working on a sermon. I've got to get some work done in here. And so I went, I don't know how long I was in there studying. I come out at one point to go down the hallway to the restroom. I look over at the table. There's Zach just sitting there all by himself, sitting at the table. And then, I don't know how long it was, but she's in the kitchen doing different things. And he stayed there a long time. But it was important to stay true to our commitment. You know, this is how we're going to do it. And there's consequences for action. We didn't know for years, decades passed before he told the story that he shoved the food in his mouth and, "I'm done, Mom," and then went down the hallway and spit it in the toilet. We didn't know that, but he had a kind of a stubborn side to him. But there's consequences. Losing privileges at home. Here's something, in fact, I want to read this because I think it's so good. And hear this. A child who doesn't do her homework risks getting lower grades and missing an opportunity to learn. A child who pushes his chores onto others risks losing privileges at home and having loved ones develop resentment towards him. I mean, those kinds of things can happen. Like, when we were little, you were always making me do your stuff, and there's a subtle resentment that can grow from that. It's important for parents to let children experience the consequences of dodging their responsibilities. Teaching kids to carry their own weight or suffer the consequences, it doesn't make the parents the bad guys. It just simply it doesn't make the parents overly strict. It just makes it, this is a really powerful life lesson for all of us. This is what we're going to learn, kids. And I don't believe that's why my son, for instance, Zach, he's serving a long prison sentence. You know his story. He's an incredible, gifted Bible teacher, studying for ministry, very strong. When he was born, James Dobson wrote the book, The Strong-Willed Child. And I thought, you know, he wrote that book just for us. And what Dobson says is when you've got a child that has a strong will, don't think of that as a bad thing. That's actually a very good thing. But it just needs to be curbed and directed. It needs to be given guidance. So if you've got a child like I did that had a very strong will, there's hope. God will be faithful. So, but if parents understand that giving age-appropriate responsibilities to children all along the way, that's going to help them. And it's actually going to make the kids, once they are grown up, look back and say, wow, I can thank God for my parents. They had the courage to do what was right. So the third thing, so far we've talked about responsibility and consequences. The third thing, personal health. Sometimes we don't think about this, but listen to this. 1 Corinthians 6:19. Do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own. 1 Corinthians 10:31. So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do it all for the glory of God. Now you tell me, left to their own devices, what child, if you just told a child, just eat whatever you want. I mean, it's going to be milk and cookies all day, am I right? It's going to be pizza and, it's going to be a huge bag of popcorn watching TV. I mean, that's just, all of us are that way. But if we're really careful to say to our kids, well, this is how we're going to do it, and it's going to help us to be healthy. An example along those lines, Stephanie and I were really careful about the movies that our kids were allowed to go, especially to go to the theater to see something. We would watch very carefully about what was on our TV too. I'm not saying that was different, but and especially now way more than when I was raising kids. Like now, you can't even just trust your kids and hey, just watch cartoons. Because, the cartoons will even try to sneak all kinds of wrong things in there and try to teach our children wrong values. But I do remember one time, the cousins were all going to see a particular movie. It was not rated what we approved of. We are super guarded about those things. And Stephanie and I talked, and we said, no, boys, no, you're just not going to go. And boy, you can imagine just, why do they get to? This isn't fair. And well, I'm sorry, but all we want to do is be able to stand before the Lord and say we tried our best. That's all. We don't mean to be mean or restrictive, but we're really guarded about the content that would be in that particular movie. We're just not going to do that. So the answer is no. And we didn't think that much about it, but years later, they told us that was a defining moment for them, where they realized we have values, and we're not hypocritical about that. We live by those values, and it has to do with personal health. Number 4 is safety. A lot of these verses are from 1 Corinthians. Paul, in his letter to the church in Corinth, gave a lot of good practical advice. 1 Corinthians 15:33, do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character. If you want your children to be safe, oh my goodness, in today's world, you guys, Lord help us. Pray, pray, pray. Like we were talking about last week, in that concept of it takes the church family working together. We all pitch in, we help out, we encourage one another along the way, because it is not easy. And safety is a big deal in our world right now. And but bad company corrupts good character. That's what the Corinthians says, and it's quoting an ancient Jewish proverb: bad company corrupts good character. So these are just some tidbits, some info. Insist on meeting the persons your child is spending time with. Don't just say, oh yeah, go hang out with whoever, but insist, I want to meet your friends. I want to know who you're hanging with. Check social media accounts. Check cell phone messages. Don't fall for the lie that our culture is saying right now that, oh, every child deserves the right to have their own personal, private life. Not while you're under our roof. No, we are the guardians of your soul, and we're going to check those things. Discuss internet safety frequently. Link the family cell phones with a location and an alert app to monitor your child's whereabouts. That's one nice benefit of today. Hey, culture, is just advancing so much in technology. Honestly, much of it is above my head. I mean, really. Like, sometimes when Ryan starts talking, I just nod and act like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. His job is cybersecurity. So, but here's one thing that is a good thing about technology. There are apps where you can know where your child is. You can get reports on if they arrived safe. Here's something about this idea of bad company corrupting good character. Instill in your children that if you need to say no to your peers, that's actually a really good thing. Don't be afraid to just say no and stick to that no. Even if you feel uncomfortable or scared, no. If it's tearing your heart to be or to behave or to do or to act like something that you know is not who you want to be, have the courage to say no. Here's a big one: enforce curfews. I think one of the saddest commentaries on current culture is that a lot of kids, as they're getting into the teenage years, there's not established curfews. You must be home at this time. This is bedtime. This is just the way it rolls. And then even about this has changed since I was raising our kids, and it's certainly changed since I was a kid. But be careful about even allowing your children to answer the phone or to answer the door. Be careful about that, because there are so many ploys and attempts to get at our innocent ones. So many things mentioned in today's culture. I'm a conservative pastor from a Pentecostal perspective. People in our society are all over the place about what they believe about matters like Illuminati, secret groups, sex trafficking, things like that. Even within our church, if you went person to person and said, what do you really think about all of these things that are buzzwords in current culture, and could it be real or is it fake? If you ask 10 people, you'll get 10 different answers. But here's the thing. For me, even if maybe people are exaggerating, maybe some people are lying, but there are people saying, I was a sex slave from the age of 3 all the way until I got to be 21 and I broke free. If they're totally lying, if they're totally exaggerating, the very fact that that exists in our current culture, we should be super careful. We should pray and pray so much for the safety of our children. Okay, so we've got 2 more, and they're both related, and then we'll get into some Q&A. Number 5, respect themselves. We must teach our children to respect themselves. Psalm 139, verse 4, I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. It's our job to instill that in our children. Guess what? You are fearfully and wonderfully made. You are precious. You are special. You're not an accident. You were on purpose. God, His fingerprints were upon you, even as you grew. For moms, even in my womb, God was knitting you together. For dads, even before we had an idea that you were on the way, guess what? God was dreaming about you. God knows you. He knows how many hairs are on your head. So respect yourself. The psalmist said, I know that full well. Now, here's something that's a little tricky, but think about this for a moment. How a child views themselves, it really is important. Because it reflects the child's self-worth, but not only that, it communicates things to others around them. So, if a child, for instance, is always self-deprecating, that means they're always putting themselves down. Oh, I'm not good. I can't do anything right. I'm a failure. Da, 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 da. If they do that, without even realizing what's happening, other kids pick up on that. And they feel it's all on a subconscious level, but other children will say, oh, well, I can pick on him because he lets himself do that to himself. And if he does that to himself, then he's certainly not going to stop me. And that is just prey for the enemy. That's just a target. So teach your children not to be arrogant or cocky or not prideful. That's not what we're talking about. But having a good self-worth that, you know what? I'm proud of my family. I'm proud of my mom. I'm proud of my dad. I'm proud of our home. I'm proud of our culture, the way that we're raised. I'm proud that we get to be part of a church family. Let all of that be part of the identity. And if you ever hear your child saying, oh, I'm no good. I'm a loser. I can't do anything right. Correct that. Step in and say, guess what? No, you're not a loser. You're a winner. You were made in God's image. That's the other verse, Genesis 1:27. God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. We must teach our children that you were not assigned your identity at the moment of your birth. No, the assignment happened way before that. From the moment of your conception, God assigned all of the ingredients necessary to make you who you are. You're created in the image of God. You are a winner. You are beautiful. You're going to make it. And so we need to do that. And so respect for self. When Zach was in the 7th grade, he tried out for the baseball team at school. And I'll never forget this. It was a Monday afternoon. He comes in after school, and at dinner I said, hey, how'd baseball tryouts go? I don't stand a chance. I'm not going to make the team. I'm not even going back tomorrow, Dad. There were 70 kids out there for one team. 70 kids. They didn't even get to see any of us. I'm not even going to go back. And I knew somehow, because as you're parenting, it'll be different things for you all along the way. But you know what I'm talking about. There's this moment where you feel the Holy Spirit say, you got to stand up right now. And so I said to him, well, I want you to know, son, if you don't make the team, that's fine. That doesn't define you. There's going to be plenty of other opportunities ahead. But I want to tell you something. We're Howards, and we don't quit. So now, you're going to go through the whole tryout week, because they're supposed to be there all Monday through Friday. You're going to go through the tryout week and honor your commitment. Now, if you don't make the team, I am so proud of you. But what's more important than making the team right now is that you understand, when I say I'm going to do something, I need to do it. And then I left that conversation thinking, oh man, it's going to crush him. He's not going to make the team. He really wanted to make the team. The next day he comes home from school. Guess what? There was only 30 kids there today. 40 of them didn't even come back. And I actually caught a catch in front of the coach. Oh, good. And then Wednesday, man, there was half of those guys. I might actually have a chance. And he ended up making the team, and he started in baseball all that season, and it was a wonderful life lesson. Now, I really do mean it would have been fine if he didn't make the team. That's not what it's about. But to tell him, hey, respect who you are. You're not junk. You were made in the image of God. And we have a wonderful chance to do that for our children. Then the last thing is respect others. Respect yourself was number 5. Number 6, respect others. When it comes to teaching kids how to interact with other children, the golden rule, right? The golden rule is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Luke 6:31. My mom and dad taught me that. They said this is the golden rule. In fact, when I was in school, I'm almost sure, my memory's a little fuzzy, but I'm almost sure it was part of our class at school. The Bible says, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And I grew up in Texas. I was going to school 1972, 73, I'm beginning. And if you remember, prayer was just being taken out of school, and then of course Roe v. Wade happened, and our schools are way different. Although I will tell you that maybe it wasn't allowed, but at our school they still prayed every day over the intercom. Let's pray before we begin the day. They did. And it shaped, it was different for us kids. I mean, that was a great blessing. But do unto others as you would have them do to you. That's a great thing to tell your kids. Hey, kids, listen, we're going to practice what's called the golden rule. We're going to treat other people the way that we hope to be treated. And that's the Bible. Romans 12:10, be devoted to one another in love. Listen to this. It says, honor one another above yourselves. That's a great way. Honor others more than you honor yourself. 1 Peter 5:5. In the same way, you who are younger, submit yourselves to your elders. All of you clothe yourselves with humility towards one another, because God opposes the proud, but shows favor to the humble. So we're to surrender and submit, and that's supposed to be the way we raise our children. Here's to end. I want to give you just a few things that specifically parents should discourage their children from being in friendships with people who do these things. And this is straight from the Bible. If they profane the Bible, that is, kids that mock the Bible, Matthew 7:6 is give us an instruction. Watch out for those kids. They can't be best friends. If they are prone to always being angry and full of wrath, Proverbs 22:24, that's not good for our relationships. If they are sexually immoral, don't be light about this. The Bible tells us, 1 Corinthians 6:18, guard against that. Protect our children from those things. If they are known to lie and cheat or engage in any kind of substance abuse, 1 Corinthians 5:11 gives us instruction about that. If they go around giving foolish advice, now think about that. Hey, you know what we ought to do? We ought to go down to that store and, go in there and raid it and come out with a few cell phones and all. The Bible says in Proverbs 14:7 that we're not going to have anything to do with those things. And so all of those are really, they're the fence for our children. I wish I could guarantee that you won't have difficult times with your kids. I thought, no one was more shocked when we went through a stretch that lasted 15 months where our son Zach, who had been involved with youth ministry, had been part of our worship team, had been part of the 40-day challenge, taking his Bible with him to high school every day, everywhere he went, who was a leader on his sports team, who always stood strong for Christ, but he dealt with some hurts the wrong way. And for 15 months, he went as far from God as I could ever imagine, until finally it landed him in prison. And I would have never imagined that. But Sunday morning, one of the things I'll be sharing as we're talking on Sunday morning, check that's not this Sunday, it's the next Sunday. I keep forgetting this. This Sunday we've got these awesome missionaries to Russia, and you're going to love them. But a week from Sunday, one of the stories I plan to tell is that Zach told us recently, the night of my arrest was the worst day of my life. But the night of my arrest was also the best day of my life, because that's where God rescued me and changed me, got a hold of my heart. I wish I could just guarantee for all of us that, it's just smooth sailing. I can't guarantee that, but I can tell you, if you provide the fence for your children and if you pray over them, I believe that no matter what they go through, eventually they're going to remember where their roots are and they're going to be okay. We're really at a point here where we're leaving in 12 minutes. I'm just wondering if any of you have any questions or comments, any conjecture Anything you could add to what I've been saying? Maybe one thing that I said triggered something for you. Let's just have a little Q&A time. Anybody have any observations about any of it? Yeah, Alyssa. Okay.
And it goes with what the golden rule, which actually was an incident that happened with Sophia.
Oh, okay.
And if you guys know my daughter, you know that she is so sensitive. And she is such a huge friend person. She considers everybody her friend.
Yeah.
And she always wants to be her friend. Well, she rides the bus team board in the transportation department, along with 2 other employees, kids, which are a little bit older. And they are a little bit older than her, but they're so mean with her.
Oh,
They always hide from her, and she gets her feelings hurt so bad. So I kind of reacted a little bit of my flesh feeling instead of, a gut feeling. And because she got so hurt because she came up to me and she said, "Mommy, you're just being so mean to me, and you don't want to play with me, And I told her, "No, you don't want Sophia, then you don't need to be talking to them anymore. Come on, let's go. You can play with yourself." And then so when you mentioned the golden rule, and I was like thinking, okay, I think I kind of taught my daughter wrong. Like, I don't know if I taught my daughter wrong right there in that moment. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
You know, what we
I don't
do a
know
lot of times is
where I was.
we cherry pick certain verses of the Bible and say, well, this applies to all situations at all times. And that is not what I meant to say. Actually, I think you just had your moment where the neighbor kicked the ball real hard and was mean to your kids. And because I think there's times where God will lead you to stand up. And of course you want to show the love of Christ. Of course you want to treat the other children in the way that you want to be treated. But even with what you described, I mean, we just don't have enough context to know everything. But I tell you what, as you were telling that about little Sophia, the pastor wants to go thump somebody on the head. I mean, she is the sweetest little girl, and that just makes me angry, but I'm praying for you for wisdom. I don't think it's wrong that you said you don't have to be friends with these 2 or 3 kids anymore. Maybe as you pray on it, Melissa, maybe God will drop something in your heart and say, this could be your approach. That's a challenging one. That's hard. Does anybody have any advice for Melissa? Yeah.
Yeah, you can be kind, but then at the same time, you don't want to be dominant.
Right.
And, you have to set the boundary, like he said earlier with his neighbor. The boundary's here, and with you, it's your daughter, and you don't come and walk all over my daughter.
I agree with that. I think, of course, in the spirit of love, and out of compassion, and try to pray it before you say it, and try to use the right tone of voice as you're talking, and even pause and smile and just ask, concern for my daughter, but maybe you're interacting with the parents, maybe you're not, maybe it's just the kids, and maybe you just tell her, Sophia, you don't have to be with them or play with them or anything, that's fine.
Right.
Don't feel guilt over it, but just commit it to prayer. I don't know. What do you guys think? I mean, anything come to mind? Any?
Be careful who you marry.
I'm sorry?
Be careful who you marry.
Oh, be careful who you marry. Marriage
you
is
know
the
what their
biggie.
what-
The biggie. Yes.
Because
Yes. Yeah.
I think it's hard sometimes too, because you're trying to teach kids to be kind, and I know that I've taught them that not every person in the world is going to like you, and they don't even need a good reason not to like you.
Yeah.
Some people are just that way, and trying to help them learn how to deal with that. But especially when you have a child like that that's just so loving and wants to love everybody, and it's really hard that concept to say, for them
Mhm.
to understand not everybody's always gonna like you, and they don't even need a reason not to like you. Some people are just like that.
Exactly. Yeah, and like, you know,
Very
that was
hard.
actually part of Sunday morning sermon. We're doing this series called Tell Me Why. And Sunday was, why doesn't anyone like me? And part of it, I remember talking about, as children, some very early kids learn like how to survive. It's survival of the fittest. It's like dog eat dog world. And some kids can be so mean. Maybe something's going on in the hearts of these children that they don't even realize this coping mechanism they may not know for decades. They might learn it someday in their 30s or in their 40s. Wow, I never noticed, but this is how I treat people. And it started way back when, and it was actually me acting tough, but on the inside there was so much fear inside of me. But or maybe they never figure it out. But you can't solve all the world's problems. Just do your best, and I'm praying for Sophia. She is truly a sweet, sweet girl. Bless her heart. And but before Becky says, I just to tell you, one time kids picked on me so bad on the school bus. I remember running. I got off at the corner stop. I ran all the way home, ran into my room, and I started crying. It was so hard. Kids can be so mean, and I don't know why, you know. So because of that, I'm going to be praying for her. I should really be praying for her. Becky, yeah.
There's a verse that says, "Be kind to those like pray for them that
Who despitefully
use you."
Yeah, good.
And be kind to them, and I forget what the whole gist of it is. I don't know by heart, but I think it's in Matthew 6:20. Matthew 6:22, something like that. I also have another that.
Well, and before you move on to that one, that's really hard to do sometimes.
It is.
It's hard to pray for people and to be kind to them. But maybe even as you pray for them, God will give you insight like, oh, I never thought about that. Wow, thank you, Holy Spirit. That's what's going on. Did you say you had another?
Yeah.
In April, you'll be next one.
So when we first got here to Buckeye, there was this kid, I don't know if you remember him at all, his name is Riker, and he was my son's age, and they came to church, and then my boy was invited to stay the night. And so I went into the house, and I looked at all of the artwork,
Oh, yeah.
and it was Dad's home-drawn artwork, and it was rated PG-13, if not
gotcha.
R.
Okay.
And so I said, we're not staying here tonight.
Yeah.
And we went back to our place.
Good for you. Good for you. Yeah. There's things like that all along the way. You did your job. God bless you for that. Yeah. And you've got awesome sons. Both Josh and Gideon, I just love. They're amazing.
And I have a M&M moment.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So when Gordy and I got married, I was still spanking him. Josh was 15. He was like 5'10" at age 15, right? Size, 11, 12 shoes already. And so I got married, and Gordy's like, okay, we're going to give him an allowance of $10 a week, or $5, I don't remember what it was. And then when they disobeyed, we can take it all.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And that really helped.
That's a good motivator. Yeah.
And now, we still have one at home. And when they started getting their own jobs, it was like, okay, you owe me $10. Or you left the trash out, well, it's $50 for the HOA fee.
Yeah. So, what age do you stop spanking kids? That's a question I get from time to time. And that's up to each parent. But I can say they will get big enough and strong enough that they'll just laugh about it internally, like you're not hurting me. And but having said that, my good friend Cordell Hines, he is a pastor in Oklahoma, and we were good friends. He grew up in Colorado. We pastored there, and Cordell had gone off to Bible college for a year. He's in college, and he came home to the farm, and he did something wrong, and Mom pulled out the belt, and she spanked him. He's a college boy, you know. Oh, he's like, it was so humiliating. My mama is spanking me, you know. But okay, April, what were you gonna ask about?
Like how you guys were saying to be kind with
Uh-huh.
others. Okay. I work at the school where my son goes. They were bullying him. They've been making fun of him because he didn't make the basketball team. Because he was short and fat. That's Elijah. So it's like, okay, so I know this kid who goes to the cafeteria. And Elijah goes, Mom, just leave it alone. No, it's not okay.
Yeah.
He's gonna,
He's gonna hear Mama.
he's gonna hear me out. Yes.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to be kind to that person.
It
It
is
is.
hard, yeah.
And I was like, okay, so it's gonna give you consequences. And Elijah goes, no, Mom, no, it's not okay. It's not, especially I work here with you.
Mhm.
No. So he was always getting in trouble in the cafeteria.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He was
yeah.
always getting in trouble. What did I do? So but
Yeah, yeah.
until we got home, Elijah goes, Mom, that was necessary. And I go, you know how I am. I get mad. Bullying, it's not okay. It's
If-
not.
If somebody touches our kids, they might as well just reach in and grab our heart and pull it out, put it on a spit, right? Because we love our kids and we
Especially
protect them.
if you work with him at the
Yes.
school.
Oh, my
in the
goodness.
same school. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, and it's really hard because I see him during lunch. So it's hard.
It is hard. It is, I was just gonna say, it is not easy. It's not easy. But you're capable to do it. You're capable. You are capable. You are capable. You guys are just knocking it out of the park. You're doing it. Yay, parents, you're winning, you know. You're raising children to honor God. Yes.
And I think it's important, and again, I'm not a parent, but I teach kids that, you know, yes, be kind and loving to everybody, but that doesn't mean you have to trust them or be their best friend or hang out with them or,
Yeah.
you know, even interact with them. Be kind,
Absolutely.
but that doesn't mean you have to necessarily be their best friend or even be around them.
That's really good. Well, guys, we're
I-
kind of, oh, one more? Okay,
I
okay,
have another good news.
okay.
My son Aiden just got out of the hospital today.
Oh, praise the Lord. I've been praying
It
for
took
Aiden.
me 2 weeks that he was in there. And now that he was in there, I did learn a lot.
Okay,
A lot.
okay.
I tried to change. In fact, what Pastor was talking about last week. What did I do as a parent?
Yeah.
What did
yeah,
I do?
right.
What did I do wrong? Did he choose to go to the wrong path? He chose to go in there for 2 weeks.
Mhm,
We talk about it. We have meetings after meetings. He did learn his lesson in the hospital for 2 weeks.
mhm. Wow, wow.
He
Yeah.
did. So he's home now. I went to go pick him up today. And he told me, Mom, I'm not gonna make no more.
Wow.
I'm not gonna smoke. I don't wanna come back
Mhm.
because it feels like a prisoner
Wow, okay. Oh, wow.
and it's hard.
It's hard.
It's really hard. So I know where you're coming from, Pastor, because
Yeah.
my son.
Yeah, yeah. Well, here's how we're going to close tonight. I'm going to show a video. The reason the screens are on, the video is only 90 seconds. But it's a video, ironically, it's a video about a dog, but it applies to this. And then when that video is over, I have to go turn it on and off but I'll come back real quick and tell you why we did the video. And then I would like for us to gather around April and pray for her, because God is with you. He is strong, and you're going to make it just fine. So I think, you guys should be able to see it. If not here, on one of the screens somewhere, just get it comfortable.
Then boards the ferry to the other side of the city. Even the local government has issued notices granting it free access to public transportation. Named Boji, all the commuters on this train route know it, showing up at the subway station every morning at 8 o'clock sharp, obeying the rules. If it's crowded, Boji obediently lies down on the ground. After the train travels through 29 stations, Boji promptly gets up, then it rushes to catch the bus. Cleverly, it finds an empty seat to climb onto. When the bus arrives at its destination, Boji quickly heads to the next boarding point to catch the ferry to the opposite island. Its daily routine has caught people's attention, making it a local celebrity and prompting local rescue teams to investigate. It turns out Boji isn't a stray dog. Its owner passed away 2 years ago. Every weekend, its owner used to take Boji out along this route to play. Now, without its owner, Boji travels 60 kilometers every day, simply because this route holds its fondest memories with its owner. This dog
That kind of commitment and loyalty, just from the disciplines and the training that it received, it should give all of us hope. As you're raising your kids, they are far more intelligent than Boji, and they're going to figure things out as they go along the way. And so be strong with your boundaries, stick with your guns. God's going to be faithful. I sure hope you guys will be back next Wednesday night. We'll keep the teaching going. And don't forget, for all of the parents of school-age kids, we've got a special gift for you at the end of it, okay? So let's gather around April and just pray for her. She is a sweet, sweet lady, and God's going to give her strength. Father, we just thank you for April. I know that you love her and you care for her. It's hard being a parent. It's hard being a mom. And I pray, Lord, over April, that in the name of Jesus, you would keep her safe and protect her heart. Let her keep doing what's right. And I pray, Lord, that April, that I feel like last week you used those words to remind her, hey, you didn't do anything wrong.